Welcome back to MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic. It is the Kitchen Table series and we are up to deck tech number 54, and in today's video it's time to join the fight club with a mono green fight deck. What's up, MTG BC? That is the MTG Burgeoning community. Here we are with another Kitchen Table Series deck tech. This one is number 54, and it's going to be a mono green fight deck. As generally is customary here during the Kitchen Table Series, let's begin with the mana base, and it's going to be pretty straightforward. We got a stack of 20 basic forests. This is mono green, so there's no sense in trying to complicate a mana base when we're only needing some green mana. So let's go straight on to our spells. We want to create some, let's say, favorable conditions for our battles, for our one-on-one fights. Why would we not want to make sure that our fighter is much more well-equipped for the battle than our opponents? So let's begin with some spells that are going to make sure that that happens. The first play set of spells we're including is an aura called Predatory Hunger. For just 1 green mana, we enchant one of our creatures, and it reads, whenever any opponent successfully casts a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on enchanted creature. So all we have to make sure is that our opponents are casting some creature spells. They're going to buff up our boys so that they can engage in a fight, and they're going to be the bigger, badder creature. 4 copies of Predatory Hunger. Alright, so before we start rolling out with our fight spells, let's continue talking about how we're going to buff up these creatures. Next, we're going to talk about a play set of enchantments. This time they're not auras, but it's going to be Quest for the Gem Blades, 1 and a green enchantment that reads, if the camera, there we go, whenever a creature we control deals combat damage to a creature, we may put a quest counter on Quest for the Gem Blades. Remove a quest counter. All we have to do is deal combat damage to a creature 1 time in order to activate Quest for the Gem Blades. That could be on our attack or our defense during combat. Once we get that quest counter, we remove it and we put 4 +1/+1 counters on target creature. I can assure you it's going to be one of our creatures almost every time, but the fact that it says target creature and not target creature we control does give us the versatility for some combat shenanigans. 4 copies of Quest for the Gem Blades. And the next playset of cards are a set that we never want in our hand. We never want to have a hand where any of these cards are in it. That means that we can't cast it for its much more manageable mana cost because of the miracle mechanic. And that's going to be 4 copies of the sorcery called Blessings of Nature. If it's in our hand, we're tapping 4 and a green to distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures. However, if it's the first card we draw during the current turn, then we can just pay 1 green and then we can cast the spell and distribute 4 +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures. So like I said, this is a card we do not want in our hand. If you're playing with this deck and your opening hand has 2 or 3 of these, you may consider taking a mulligan because the 1 green is so much better than it clunking up your hand needing 5. 4 copies of Blessings of Nature. All right, so we talked about our performance-enhancing spells. Now let's get to the fight. We got 8 instant speed fight spells, and they're really not different. All they are just different names. So let's start with the most recent spell, and that's called Pounce. 1 and a green, it's instant speed. A target creature we control fights target creature we don't control. And for anyone who's unfamiliar with the fight mechanic, it just means each deals damage equal to its power to the other. 4 copies of Pounce. And not to be outdone, the original instant speed fight spell, we're going back down to the time of Gate Crash, and this is Pit Fight. For 1 and any gruel mana, but this is mono green, so it's going to be 1 and a green. Target creature we control fights another target creature. So this goes a little bit in saying that this doesn't necessarily specify that it has to be a target creature that we don't control to fight. I can only foresee instances in which we are gifted a creature that's dealing us some kind of unnecessary damage or predicament that we would want to fight a creature that we control, but the option is still there. 4 copies of Pit Fight. All right, so we got our 24th. We got 1 dozen performance-enhancing spells and then 8 fight spells. Now let's meet the creatures of Burgeoning's Fight Club. We are not going to want to fight with all of these creatures, but some of them are definitely going to be our prizes. The first one, however, is definitely in here to help with the ramp, and that's going to be a full playset of Lanor Elves. 1 green, put it into play. It's a 1/1. It taps for a green. It helps to power out some of our 3 CMC creatures that are going to act as our big-time fighters on turn 2. 4 copies of Lanor Elves, which could end up fighting other creatures and could end up being chump blockers. And for the purposes of full clarity, with any of our performance-enhancing spells over there, our Lanor Elves could get jacked enough to really do some damage out on the battlefield. Next up, we have a full playset of one of the best cards from Avacyn Restored, and that's Overwhelm Tracker. For 1 green mana, it's a 1/1 human that has the ability to tap 1 and a green and turn sideways, and have target creature we control fight another target creature. Again, the Overwhelm Tracker, although it's only 1/1, because of some of the tech that we have involved with our auras and the blessings of nature, the Overwhelm Tracker, in addition to the Lanor Elves, they could be the creatures that we so choose to fight. However, they also have more versatile expectations with the idea of mana ramp and contributing to the fight mechanic. All right, so let's move on to where the deck revolves, and it's around these next creatures, and you'll see why momentarily. We have a full play set of Ronis the Indomitable. 2 and a green for a 5/5 death-touching indestructible god that can't attack or block unless we control another creature with power 4 or greater. Another reason to look for our utility creatures over here in the middle as a way in which to trigger Ronis to be able to attack or to block. However, just his presence on the battlefield as a 5/5 death-touching indestructible creature, and any one of our fight spells or abilities will put down most creatures that are on the battlefield, because Death Touch will deal damage. It doesn't have to be combat damage, just the damage dealt by Death Touch will destroy the creature outside of regeneration or protection or indestructibility. And on the reverse of it, with Ronis being indestructible, nothing's going to deal damage to it outside of wither sources or maybe some kind of infect. So we can also tap 2 and a green, and another target creature gets +2/+0 and trample until end of turn. So we do have a built-in ability as long as we have another creature on the battlefield. Perhaps it's a Lanor Elves or an Overwhelm Tracker, and then we can buff one of them up enough to allow Ronis to attack. 5/5 Death Touch Indestructible, you're looking at one of the win conditions of the deck. 4 copies of Ronis the Indomitable. Our next creature, and that's another 4 of course, we are going to roll with a full play set of Predatory Ooze. This wonderful ooze from original, I think that's Dark Ascension. Dark Ascension? Yeah, from Dark Ascension. It's 3 green, and it's 1/1, and it's indestructible. Whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Predatory Ooze this turn dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Predatory Ooze. There's a lot to unpack with the crowning jewel of this deck. So let's begin with the indestructible. Nothing's going to destroy Predatory Ooze outside of a sacrifice effect or a minus effect or anything with wither or with infect. Outside of sacrifice or exile, nothing's going to destroy Predator Ooze, so we can send it into combat without us ever worrying about it being destroyed during combat. It doesn't even have to deal the damage in order to get the +1/+1 counter on it from its first ability. We just send it off into combat and it gets a +1/+1 counter. And whenever a creature is dealt damage, keep in mind that this does not say combat damage. It's just whenever a creature is dealt damage, Predator Ooze gets a +1/+1 counter. So if we slide Predator Ooze over here to the left for a moment and we look at all of our different spells for fighting, we have 8 of them, and our 4 spells, our 4 abilities on Overwhelm Tracker that allow Predator Ooze to fight any creature. If Predator Ooze destroys that creature, guess what? It's going to get a +1/+1 counter on it. It doesn't have to be combat damage. And again, if we are able to put on a Predatory Hunger, it makes Predator Ooze bigger. The Blessings of Nature just puts more and more counters on there. So does Quest for the Gemblade. So with Predator Ooze in play without some form of non-traditional removal that's outside of just destroy, Predator Ooze is just going to run the table. 4 copies of Predator Ooze. And the last play set of cards, there's not a lot of variety here because these are the cards that work the best and have the greatest synergy within the deck, but we are going to add 1 full playset of Nylea, God of the Hunt. 3 and a green for a 6/6 Indestructible God, and of course, because it's one of the original Theros gods, it does have Devotion, so it's not a creature unless we have Devotion to green of 5 or more. And this reads that other creatures we control have trample. So as big as Predator Ooze could potentially get, it could still get chump blocked for days. However, with the presence of Nylea giving it trample, or with Ronis buffing it and giving it trample, we have the ability to trample right over those chump blocking creatures and get victory through much, much rewarded combat. And it also has the ability, Nylea here, to 3 and a green, and target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. So this ability here is a bit better than what Ronis does. It gives it +2 and trample, +2/+0 on trample for 2 and a green. Well, I don't know. It already has the trample with the extra 2, but if it's going to the Predator Ooze, it doesn't really matter that much because Predator Ooze is indestructible. Either way, 4 copies of Nylea is going to help us give the trample needed to win the game. And there you have it, MTG BC. This is the BC Fight Club. We're looking at Mono Green Fight Deck, Kitchen Table Series Deck Tech number 54. Let me know your thoughts about this deck in the comments section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things Magic.